This is a reading of an abridged version of the Michael Brown article, Welcome to the ICU, Part 1, Skimming the Surface, a shamanic approach and perspective to enhancing physical well-being, mental clarity, and emotional balance. Links to the original article are below. The reading begins. This energetic practice is simple, and applying it, which is as effortless as it is simple, requires only awareness. Within just a few days of its application, immediate shifts are noticeable, and when wielded consistently for a few weeks, profound transformations are initiated. It is called the ICU. There is nothing wrong with you, but there is an energetic blind spot in your awareness, rendering you vulnerable to something. The intent of this article is to provide you with the tools and insights that empower you to integrate this predicament. The experience of being triggered into emotionally driven reactive behavior through a hypnotic, repetitive thought form can be due to an encounter with parasitic, energetic entities. As long as the childhood imprinting of fear, anger, and grief within my emotional body remains unintegrated, then I am an organic battery containing a latent energetic charge that can be repeatedly triggered to provide an endless source of energetic sustenance for those that feed on negative emotional fodder. If you find the whole idea of energetic parasites unacceptable, then this is my invitation to you. Keep an open mind and suspend all belief for now, because you have more to gain by eliminating these parasites from your energy system than I have from convincing you they exist. Let us take a closer look at what these energetic parasites are. Have you seen pictures of sucker fish clinging to whales and sharks? Energetically, these are what they look like. They attach themselves to, and feed upon the energy field of any being containing the unintegrated dysfunctional conditions we conceptually call fear, anger, and grief. To continue to live, they must feed on the resonance of that which created them. They do not possess their own emotional bodies, and so they have to possess ours to continue to exist. They can only prey on us invisibly while our emotional body awareness is diminished, a condition we are party to upholding through our ongoing suppression of the fear, anger, and grief imprinted within our emotional field during childhood. The bottom line is that until we cleanse and thus restore balance to our emotional body, we remain vulnerable to being hosts to energetic parasites. Fortunately, there is a simple practice that, when wielded consistently, not only cleans our energetic field of these parasites, but empowers us to become unattractive as a food source. By clearing interfering parasitic distortion within our energy field, this practice also enables us to accelerate our overall emotional cleansing. This practice can be wielded at any time, in any place, and under any circumstance. Its power is in its consistency. It consists of 3 effortless steps. 1. Stopping. The easiest place for us to catch the energetic entity is in the telling of the story. The moment we notice we are starting to tell a story about how someone is doing us wrong, and how we ought to show them a thing or two, we must immediately stop telling the story. No matter how convincing the story, no matter how the presented evidence portrays us as being justified in feeling self-righteous and in taking action, we must stop the telling of the story. Any story persuading us to enter reactive behavior falls into this category. 2. Seeing. We must immediately focus our attention on the uncomfortable feeling or presence underlying the story. Do not even spend a single moment attempting to figure out what the identity of the dysfunctional emotion is. We simply use our awareness, our inner attention and felt perception, to look directly at its presence within our field. We look at it by feeling it. It is easy to see because it is the uneasy feeling underlying the story that is being told. Simply look at this feeling. 3. Addressing. We then say, I see you. Use these exact words. If we are amidst people when we feel energetically compromised, we say these words silently, inwardly, but firmly. When we are alone, we say these words out loud, using our voice, the spoken word. We say these words without reactivity, without any negative charge. We address the energetic parasite as a matter of fact. I see you. What we immediately notice is that the moment we address this uncomfortable, underlying presence in this direct way, The story stops completely and the feeling underlying it freezes. Then, it bolts out of our awareness. Sometimes the energetic parasite may hang on in sheer disbelief that we are able to see it with our awareness and are actually addressing it with our attention. If it hangs on, we keep watching it and repeat the words, "I see you." These energetic entities only have power in us not seeing them. They are like burglars in a household believing the house is completely empty. If there is a burglar in our house busy stealing stuff and we say, "I see you," from another room, they become startled and run out. The moment the parasitic intruder becomes visible, the game is over. Initially, these energetic entities keep returning and trying their luck, because for a long time we have been their unsuspecting food source. This is why consistency in this practice is imperative. Whenever they attack, we must catch them in the telling of the story before we become co-opted into believing it. We must refrain from taking over the telling of the story and becoming so hypnotized by it that we reactively act upon it. This practice of stopping in the story swiftly leads to a revelation. We realize the initial storyteller that we have for a long time assumed was our own inner voice is the voice of an imposter. We realize this instigating storyteller is an empty voice that has an emotionless, clinical, and almost mechanical resonance to it. It only fools us into believing it is us, because of the following: it impersonates our way of speaking to ourselves, it uses the same verbal mannerisms and vocabulary as us, and the content of the tale it tells is intentionally associated with an unintegrated emotional condition within our field, and therefore causes a powerful resonance that we identify with. Within days of consistently catching it, we notice a discernible shift in our energy. The parasitic attacks still come, and so our ongoing vigilance is necessary, but the overall game of hide and speak is over. Within weeks of consistently applying this practice, we liberate ourselves from the majority of this energetic interference and gain an increasing sense of physical well-being, mental clarity, and emotional balance. This in turn assists us to apply more focus and have more impact on the task at hand, which is integrating the dysfunctional imprinting within our emotional body that renders us vulnerable to parasitic attack in the first place. This technique is not new. For centuries it has been wielded by shamans the world over as a means of liberation from the vulnerable predicament facing emotionally imprinted humans. From a shamanic perspective, this practice has three distinct parts to it. 1. Stalking. This is when we wield our awareness through felt perception, as a means to pay careful attention to how and when these parasitic entities attack. We stalk ourselves and the parasitic entity, taking note of the precise conditions in which we are susceptible to these energetic thefts. What is it about the condition of our personal energy field that renders us vulnerable? At what times of day and night, and in what state of being are we in when attacked? The act of stalking not only awakens us to the wide ranges of conditions that lead to vulnerability, but also give us insight about the personality of the predator. 2. Hunting for power. This is the ICU aspect of the practice. This approach of watching with awareness turns the table on parasitic entities. We rob them of their power over us, their assumed invisibility. We now hunt them by inwardly or outwardly acknowledging their presence within our energy field. The moment we apply this tool of insight, we become less and less vulnerable to their tactics of hypnotic impersonations and emotional agitation. 3. Gathering knowledge. By successfully becoming aware of these parasitic entities, and by taking the steps to become impenetrable, we gain powerful experiential knowledge about the mechanisms of our own energy system. We learn how to manage our energy system responsibly. This simultaneously awakens emotional body awareness and insight. In this light, these energetic presences are transformed from parasites into allies, as instead of feeding on us, we use them as a means to deliver ourselves into greater awareness. That's how to do what I call the ICU practice. What follows is more detailed information on how they interact with us, times you may be more vulnerable to attack, and what to watch out for. The way these parasitic entities function is that they take advantage of our energetic wounds, the presence of unintegrated emotional conditions within our energy field. For example, if as a child I have an experience of being molested, this emotional imprint, which is made up of a salad of fear, anger, and grief, remains unintegrated until I consciously become aware of it and have the perceptual tools to transform it. While this condition remains unintegrated, it is a festering energetic wound that can be tapped into by anything that has the capacity to perceive it within my energy field. It does not create a wound within me, it parasitically preys on an emotional wound that is not yet healed. It then feeds on the energy radiated by the emotional disturbance. Whenever it is hungry, it then skillfully uses this unintegrated condition within my emotional body as leverage, to trigger me into providing food for it. To feed on me, all the energetic parasite has to do is wait patiently on the edges of my energetic field, until my energetic environment is compromised and vulnerable. Then it attacks. There are a number of ways that my energy field may become compromised and vulnerable. By another's reactive behavior toward me. By feeling down, and therefore emotionally vulnerable. By feeling up, and therefore emotionally undiscerning. By being physically run down or overstressed. By not getting enough sleep. By constant exposure to media that causes me fear, anger, or grief. By entering encounters with others that focus on fear, anger, or grief. By taking any substance that artificially manipulates my energy field, like marijuana, alcohol, tobacco, and all mind-altering chemicals. In the moments when I am awaking from a night's sleep or an afternoon nap and are not yet fully conscious. The energetic parasite watches my emotional body like a lion in the bush stalking a herd of buck. The moment my energetic environment becomes vulnerable, all it does is bait me. It accomplishes this by telling me a story that I hear in what appears to be the sound of my own inner voice. And deliberately constructing the story to tug emotionally on a particular instance of childhood imprinting that remains unintegrated. For example, if I was a child molested by a man, the story may have something to do with how terrible all men are, or how a particular man around me appears to be taking advantage of me, or how a particular man in my environment is taking me for granted. The story will insinuate that it's time I did something to stand up for myself, and that I have every right to do so. The moment I accept the story is the moment I bite the bait, and in this moment it has me hooked. I then join in, and voluntarily take over the telling of the story to myself. Once I assume the role of storyteller, the energetic parasite settles back into my energy field, waits, and watches like someone who has just set a mousetrap. The story is never true and has absolutely no factual foundation to it, yet it is profoundly convincing. It is convincing because it skillfully stirs up associated emotions. Because anger is the emotionally dysfunctional condition most likely to initiate outer projections of reactive behavior, the story's focus is mostly on the resonance of self-righteous revenge. Eventually, like a jury hypnotized by a brilliant lawyer, this hypnotic and emotionally manipulative story moves us into action. We initiate and enter a reactive behavioral encounter whose supposed intent is to empower us to stand up for ourselves, and to make ourselves heard. It is only once we have reacted in this manner that the hypnotic spell begins to unravel, and reveal the emptiness and falseness of its illusion. What frustrates us so deeply is that this sequence of events happens over and over again. And every time we buy into the same reactive pattern, if we have sufficient honesty with ourselves and awareness, we always discover the same thing, that our story was not true and our reactive behavior was misplaced and unfounded. Each time this happens, it astounds us, how we always fall for the same stupid ploy. It's as if we momentarily slip into unconsciousness and only awake after the fact. The good news is, this energetic practice to rid ourselves of parasites is simple, and applying it, which is as effortless as it is simple, requires only awareness. Within just a few days of its application, immediate shifts are noticeable, and when wielded consistently for a few weeks, profound transformations are initiated. This practice empowers us in taking another crucial step towards becoming the peace we seek to manifest in the world.